first thing he said, and I remember it like it was yesterday, he said, "Gentlemen, welcome to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Welcome to the National Football League. You're now getting paid to play football, so that makes it your profession. But don't make football your life. Please don't make football your whole life. If you do, you're going to leave this game disappointed."
So I don't really do introductions. I think your resume speaks for itself, but I kind of want to, in the essence of telling your story, go back to those days in Jackson, Michigan, right? That's your hometown?
It is. It is, yes. Small automotive town. Everybody knew each other. Probably 30,000 people there when I was growing up. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, Drew. It was just, you learned hard work, you learned the value of family, you learned about life and how to work hard. It was awesome.
And was sports something that you always gravitated towards as a youngster? What was that like for you?
I did. My mother was a really good athlete. She was a good basketball player. She played just about every sport. My dad was more of the individual sport guys. He liked cross country and track and field and boxing, but he played baseball with me. I can remember throwing a baseball with my dad when I was 4 or 5 years old. The first thing he taught me to do, and we shot baskets in the backyard, and we threw the football. And he took me to University of Michigan games and took me to Detroit Tigers and Detroit Lions games. So I just always became interested in sports. And Little League baseball from the time I was probably 6 or 7 years old, Pee Wee football, just every sport that you could play. I enjoyed it. Basketball was my favorite sport, though. That's what I kind of always thought I was going to be a basketball player. I dreamed of being a basketball player. I would go home and shoot baskets before our football games. I just, that was my sport, but I didn't grow tall enough, I guess.
What was that moment when you realized this isn't going to work out for me and football is going to be my path?
Well, I was always better in basketball all the way through middle school, through high school. I was being recruited in high school. A lot of people recruited me in football, but quite a few people in basketball. I wanted to give both sports a try. And so University of Minnesota was one of the places that was going to allow me to try to be a quarterback and a basketball player. I got there. I played my freshman year, both sports. I still liked basketball better. At the end of my sophomore year, I got hurt one of the last games of the football season. And so it was a struggle going out on the basketball team. I wasn't healthy. And so I just missed kind of that sophomore year of basketball. And after that, the football just took off. But I still always fancied myself as a basketball player.
When you were done playing your days as football, would you play a lot of pickup basketball for some exercise?
I did. I actually, believe it or not, 4 years ago, I was 62 years old, and I tore my Achilles tendon playing basketball with the kids' church. We said, hey, the older guys, we're going to have this ministry to the younger guys. We can play. And I hadn't really played competitively in a long time. I went out there the first week. I said, I'm going to be pretty cool about this and not go too hard. And then the second week I got into it and I tore my Achilles. So that was the end of my basketball career.
Did you notice it took a little bit longer to recover as an older?
Oh my goodness. Yes, it did. The doctor said, I don't know what you were doing out there on the court. He said, I repaired Achilles, but not on people 60 years old. So you need to just slow down and stop. So I did. That taught me that you got to be careful with your body when you get a little older.
So obviously, it sounds like your mom and dad were pretty impactful for you at a young age. What did they kind of teach you or instill in you at a young age? I know your dad was an Air Force pilot, a member of the Tuskegee Airmen there in World War II. What were kind of some of the values, or I guess the way they went about parenting you, that maybe impacted you or set you up for success down the road?
Yeah, my parents were pretty incredible. I was born in 1955, so it's kind of the end of the segregation era, the beginning of integration. Uh, I'm in this automotive town. Everybody in Jackson kind of worked in the auto factory or Goodyear tire or the glass factory, something to do with automobiles. And both my parents went to college, and my dad talked at an early age about not letting anybody else define you, not doing what everybody else did. If you want to reach out and dream, you should do that. And I don't think most of the guys that I went to school with, elementary school and middle school, thought about going to college. It just wasn't what we did. You got to be 18 and you went to work in the factory, and that's what you did. Well, my dad didn't let us see things that way. And he had a degree, he had a PhD in biology, and education was important to him. My mom was a high school English teacher. And so they talked about education, but they also talked about how you lived, about doing things right, about serving the Lord, and no matter what you did in life, doing it for the right reasons, doing it the right way. And my mom was a Sunday school teacher as well. And so she would practice on Thursday nights. She'd practice her lessons on us and make sure that, we understood what she was trying to get across so she didn't have to adjust things. But just growing up in that household and learning to dream and have aspirations, but also knowing that how you treated people and how you were viewed and how your character was. Those were the real important things in life. My parents taught us that.
What led your dad to join the Air Force after having a PhD?
It's amazing. Well, what happened? He was a senior in high school during World War II, and he said he always wanted to fight and fight for our country. So he enlisted in the service. As soon as he turned 18 and graduated, and he enlisted, it was actually the last year of World War II when he was a senior. And I didn't know this story until after my dad died, but at that time the Air Force was still segregated and they weren't taking black pilots. So he went down to Tuskegee, Alabama with this group of African American young men, and he became one of the Tuskegee Airmen. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. He always talked about being in the Air Force. He never really mentioned it specifically. The only indication I got of it, whenever I would complain about something going wrong or something not being fair, he would say, life isn't always fair. Sometimes they don't want you to fly. You have to teach yourself how to fly. And I never thought about it. I knew what he meant, that, hey, everything can't always go right. Sometimes you got to work a little harder. But then at his funeral, one of his friends was talking about him and said, hey, one of our proudest moments was when Will Dungy went into the Tuskegee Airmen. And all of a sudden the light went on to me. That's what Dad was always talking about. You might have to teach yourself how to fly. And then I kind of understood, and I did a little research on it. But that's the mentality that those guys had at that time. And my dad, so he fought in the service. The war ended very soon after he joined. But he came back, went to the University of Michigan, got a degree in education, and went on to get a master's in biology and then a PhD, and he became a teacher. He and my mom both, their dream were to educate people. They thought education was so important that they wanted to see the young people around them learn and grow. They wanted to see them be the best that they could be. And I still get letters today from people who had my mom in high school or had my dad in college, and just what an impact they made on their lives.
Mm. It's amazing, like, what two invested parents can do for a generation of kids down the road. And obviously you're well invested in that with All Pro Dad, and we'll talk about that later on. I want to jump to kind of your time at Minnesota and playing quarterback and being a black quarterback at a time when there weren't a lot of guys doing that. What was that experience like at Minnesota for you? and what kind of experience was it like coming out and going into the NFL draft and being evaluated and then ultimately switched to and converted to safety? Kind of talk about that season of your life.
Yeah, it was funny because of my dad and my mom. I just never thought about any barriers or anything. And I played quarterback from the time I was in Pee Wee football. It's just, I didn't even think twice about it. And so I went to predominantly white high school, but I was the quarterback. And I started getting recruited, and people were telling me, my high school buddies, make sure that the school is going to want you as a quarterback, because a lot of schools don't. And it didn't even register to me. I mean, why else would they want me? That's what I do. I'm a quarterback. But I went to the University of Minnesota. They had a history of African-American quarterbacks. Sandy Stevens had been an All-American there, led them to the Rose Bowl. It was never really an issue. And I got to play a lot my freshman year there. By my sophomore year, I was a starter, and I played 3.5 years of football. And we started having some success. My junior year, my senior year, we're throwing the ball, playing a pro-style offense. Scouts were coming around. And I had never really thought about playing professional football until probably the end of my junior year. I was there to get my education, wanted to be a basketball player. I wanted to experience college life and grow. But as we had success my junior year, and I started meeting with scouts and talking to different coaches, I think, hey, I've got a chance to play in the NFL. So I remember one particular game, as you mentioned, it was rare in those days, in the mid-'70s, to see an African-American quarterback in the NFL. But in college, it was becoming pretty normal. And I played a game my senior year. We played the University of Washington. I was leading the Big Ten in passing at the time. Warren Moon was the Washington quarterback. He's leading the Pac-10 in passing, and we played each other. And they beat us, and it was an exciting game. And people just talked about the level of play that day, and that was it. We didn't think much else about it. But the draft comes and goes, and I didn't get selected. I was pretty shocked. I was devastated, actually, because I was pretty sure I was going to go to the NFL and play quarterback. And this was one of the first kind of setbacks I'd had in my athletic career. And I remember Drue praying that night after the draft, what am I supposed to do here? I don't quite understand this. And Lord, I just need some clarity. I want to keep playing. Well, the Montreal Alouettes in the Canadian Football League, they had my rights. And at the time, amazingly, as I look back on it, they were kind of a powerhouse team. Marv Levy was the head coach there before he went to Buffalo and had all that success with the Bills. He was the head coach there, and Bill Polian, who I would work for years later, he was the general manager. And they said, hey, come on up here. It's perfect style of play. We scouted you. We love you. And we want you to be our quarterback. Well, there was something inside me, and I can't explain it. I couldn't explain it then. I know today, now, looking back, it was the Holy Spirit and just giving me some guidance. But I just said, man, I want to play in the NFL. I want to play with the best. But nobody wants me. So what do I do? And I just waited a day or two, and I got a call from the Pittsburgh Steelers. One of their scouts said, we don't need you as a quarterback, but Coach Noel likes smart players. He likes good athletes. We've had success with guys adjusting. We want to try you at a different position. So they offered me $2,000 to sign, and I turned down a guaranteed contract for big money in the Canadian League to sign for $2,000 and, a chance to make the team with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it was really the turning point in my life. It was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And I went to Pittsburgh and switched positions to free safety and just met up with a group of guys who were not only great players at that time. They were in the midst of this 4 Super Bowl run in 6 years, but really had some awesome Christian guys who, for the first time, I kind of had some role models to look at character-wise, and it was special.
When you talked about the Alouettes owning your rights, was that because you got selected in the CFL, or?
Yeah, they had a CFL draft and they selected me. So,
Okay.
and it happened long before the NFL draft. So they had been talking to me before, and I kept saying, well, let me wait and see what happens with the draft. Well, of course, when I didn't get drafted, then Coach Levy, he took that, see, hey, the NFL doesn't want you. You're tailor-made for you. And at that time, a lot of African-American quarterbacks were going up there and playing. And in fact, the next year, Warren Moon would go to Canada and win 5 championships in a row and then become the most desired, quarterback 5 years later. And I thought about that, but there was just something just pulling me and said, I want to try to play in the NFL.
So what was that first year like in Pittsburgh, converting and learning a whole new skill set and becoming a defensive player? Do you recall like your first practices, like getting in a back pedal and doing those things for a first time?
It was so ridiculous, Drew. Some of that stuff I knew. Once they told me I was going to sign, I should start doing the drills and work out and catch the ball and things like that I had never done. But everything was different, and I was trying to learn at the highest level. So I'm out there trying to learn how to tackle and try to do things that I had never done before. And I'm going against the best guys. I mean, Lynn Swan and John Stallworth, and I'm trying to figure out how to cover them. And it was just ridiculous. And I remember the first special teams drill, when they put me out as a gunner on the punt team. And there were 2 guys, and Coach Knoll said, now these 2 guys are going to try to stop you. They're not going to let you get down there and get to the punter. You got to beat them. And I remember thinking to myself, I used to have a red jersey on in practice. Nobody could touch me. And now I got 2 guys who are just, ready to tear me up and throw me into the stands. How am I supposed to do this? And Coach Knoll, he just looked at me and he said, let me tell you this. There are no easy jobs out here. Because if it was easy, we'd have 47 people. No, we have 80,000 people doing it and 47 people watching. But because it's tough, it's the other way around. So if you want to be one of those 47 people doing it, you got to figure this out. And every day was like that. Every day was something new that I hadn't experienced before.
You keep bringing up Coach Chuck Knoll, obviously a really legendary coach. What did you mentioned something there about it being tough. What other lessons did he teach you as a player? I know you later coached for him as well.
I'm telling you, Drew, that was the biggest blessing that I could have had, to play for Coach Knoll and then later to work for him. I was around him 10 years, and it couldn't have been better for me. Couldn't have had a better role model. The very first meeting we ever had, I'm in there, rookies report. I'm in the front row with my notepad like I always was as a quarterback, and I'm expecting him to tell me how we're going to keep winning Super Bowls, how I'm going to make the team, what I need to do. And I'm just ready to go. The first thing he said, and I remember it like it was yesterday, he said, gentlemen, welcome to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Welcome to the National Football League. You're now getting paid to play football. So that makes it your profession. But don't make football your life. Please don't make football your whole life. If you do, you're going to leave this game disappointed. Part of the reason you're here, we've got to help you find your life's purpose, what's going to fulfill you. It won't be all on that field. Yeah, we'll win some games and you'll do some good things. But if all you have is football, it's going to be very shallow. We've got to get you involved in the community. You've got to figure out what you want to do in life. This is the first thing I'd heard. I'm writing this down, and I expected it to be just the opposite. Hey, now you're in the National Football League. You worked hard in college. You got to work twice as hard. You got to be in this 24/7. And he was just the opposite. And he demonstrated that to us. His family was so important to him. His nephew was always around. His son was around. We had family days. We had family days at practice. When I went to work for him later on as an assistant coach, it was always make sure you get home, spend some time with your family. We'll get our work done. And here this guy was winning Super Bowl. So I saw that it could be done that way. You didn't have to be that one-track mind, 24/7, just locked in on the game. And that was the best lesson I could have learned as a young player and a young coach.
It sounded like a little bit when you were coming out of college, you didn't even have like an idea you wanted to play in the NFL. And I'm assuming when you got to the NFL, it sounds like you were a guy that was just kind of like living in the moment. So when he kind of gave you that advice, I don't know. It just seems like, I feel like nowadays people are like, you got to have your 1, 5, 10-year goal. Like you got to plan all this out. But it sounds like you were kind of just, I don't know, just finding your passions as they came a little bit.
Yeah, I really was. I didn't know, what professional football was all about. Back in those days, it was different. We made $25,000 a year. A lot
I was going to ask you how much you guys were making.
Yeah, I actually made 20. My first year, I made 20, and my $2,000 bonus.
That's
when I would tell my players that, they wouldn't believe it. There's no way you could have played for $20,000. Well, we did. Guys had off-season jobs. I worked in a bank after my first year in the off-season, and that's just what you did. But Coach Noel was he was so unique at that time, and you'd hear about coaches sleeping in the office and coaches that did nothing but coach, and he wasn't that way at all. He wanted you to develop. He wanted you to be around other people. He wanted you to look at life in a different way, and that was so great and so special. And again, I think it was just the Lord taking me there and letting me see that, as opposed to maybe being in a different type of organization. So, I kind of come through that. And then after that training camp and the preseason games, and I even have to tell you, it was so miraculous for me to make the team. We had guys get hurt, guys walk out of camp, and contract disputes. I mean, I started out, I was like 20th safety, and I ended up being the number 4 guy by the end of training camp. But it was really more the other 15 guys having problems and issues than it was me playing well. And I ended up making the team. And once you made the team, then the owner, Art Rooney Sr., would invite you into his office and talk. And I remember he brought me in and he said, welcome to the Steelers. It's great. Our family's so excited for you. You're going to have a good time here. We've got a great group of guys. We've got a great fan base. You're going to have people that'll buy your jerseys. They're going to come sit in all kinds of weather. They're going to cheer you. But I don't want you just to take things in. I want you to give back. I want you to make Pittsburgh your home. I want you to become part of the community. We want you to get involved. And they actually had kind of assignments for rookies during your off day. They had community service projects. You could sign up for them, but you had to do something twice a month in the community on our day off. And they wanted to teach you that it wasn't just, you weren't here just to play. And that was one of Mr. Rooney's sayings. Don't make Pittsburgh a more fun place to be just 3 hours a day on Sunday afternoon. We want you to help make Pittsburgh a better place to live and a better place to be. And he was very serious about that. And I saw what a difference that made in guys' lives. I saw my teammates doing it, and it just became second nature. And so years later, when I become a head coach and I can model things, I'm doing the same thing with my players and telling them that it's important that we win games, but it's way more important that they get involved and start winning in the community.
So what did you learn, I guess, from Coach Noel, maybe observing he and Mr. Rooney's, like, their just work habit and routine? Like, how were they so able to be so balanced? Was it they were just very disciplined in their routines about getting their work done and then setting aside time for that community service and their family time? Was it just their priorities? What did you learn, maybe as a player, maybe even as a coach, that helped you do that? I mean, you were raising 11 kids with your wife, and so you had demands off the field as well as on the field as a coach. What observations did you see in their work, daily work routines?
What I saw from them was priorities, and they wanted the Steelers to be great, and they wanted to have the people of Pittsburgh, the community, experience a great football team. But they wanted more than that. And that's what I took from them. that you could do things and you could be very good at your job, but still do other things, and you could still be balanced, and you could still have the community mean something to you. And if there's anything I learned from them, it was that. And so for the rest of my career, whether it was playing or coaching, or even after I retired from coaching, I understood that, boy, how you live in your community, what you do, the people you impact, that's way more important than your job title or your job description or how much money you make.
Coach, nowadays I feel like most guys have like their home away from home. So like a lot of guys, they'll be here during the season and then they'll be away in the off season. What was that the same back then, or did most guys like stay situated where they were at? You talked about getting involved in the community. Like, was that just during the season, or was that kind of a year-round thing?
I think athletes back then did tend to go home, back to their college or where they grew up, and kind of their city where they played. That's just where they worked. But Mr. Rooney and Coach Noel were so different, and they just encouraged you, come to Pittsburgh, move in, make the city yours, and don't look at yourself as just somebody who's going to come in here, play for 16 weeks during the season, and then go home. Get yourself locked into the community. And so we had a lot of guys, more guys than most teams had, guys who lived there, and they were part of it. And I think that's why to this day, you hear talk about the Steeler Nation, and wherever the Steelers go, they always had this fan base following them. I think that's because of that connection that we made with the community, and that goes way back to the 1970s.
That's fascinating. Because we obviously just moved from San Diego to LA, and you, as a player, you want it to happen overnight. You want a big fan base, and obviously winning plays a large part of that. But that's cool to hear your perspective on like the history of community involvement and building trust with the community and building rapport that way, going back decades.
And we had it. And I'll tell you, I share a story with you from my rookie year that kind of tells you the story. That's what Mr. Rooney tried to foster. That's what Coach Noel tried to foster. Well, I'm a young rookie now, not drafted. I got my $2,000 bonus, so I'm not going to buy a new car because I might get cut, and then I couldn't pay for my car. So I drove up to training camp in the car that my dad got for me when I was a sophomore in college. It was like an 8-year-old Buick LeSabre. So by the time I got to the Steelers, it was like 12 years old. So I pull into the parking lot the first time. The guy's not even going to let me in. He said, "I know you're not on the team." And I said, "Yeah, I really am. I'm on the team." Guys are honking, the veteran. "Yeah, he's on the team. Let him in." So we're playing a Monday night game. We beat the Cincinnati Bengals, and I come, and my car won't start. My battery's dead. I got this old beat-up car, and a fan just comes up and says, "I see your car won't start. Do you need a jump?" And he actually drove, got his car, came back with battery cables and gave me a jump, not because he wanted an autograph or anything, but that's the kind of connection that they had. Hey, that was one of his guys who needed help, and he helped me out. But that's what Mr. Rooney was trying to foster, and that's what we had.
That's so amazing. Quick aside, what did you do with that $2,000 signing bonus?
I saved it up, and I got my first apartment when I made the team and got ready to go. And then once I knew, about 3 weeks in, and I knew I was on the team and I was going to make it for the whole year, then I ordered a new car. It was a 1977 Thunderbird, Ford Thunderbird, sky blue, white top, and you couldn't tell me I hadn't made it then. When that car came in, and I was able to ditch my old beat-up car and come to work in that Thunderbird, man, you couldn't tell me anything.
It's decades later, and now the go-to is guys get they get a Charger, or a lot of guys are getting Teslas now. You see these Teslas; they're everywhere. We got like 2 or 3 rookies from last year that have got new Teslas.
Yeah, the Teslas, I see them when I'm broadcasting and I go do interviews, and it's crazy. Now, back in our day, the Mercedes, that was the go-to. When you made enough money to get a Mercedes, that's when people thought you had made it. So the Tesla has become the new Mercedes, I think.
So you sound like you figured out the safety position well, because you guys went on to win a Super Bowl there in Pittsburgh, and I think you had like something like 6 interceptions that season. What kind of set that team apart? I guess being a part of like a championship build in Pittsburgh, like what allowed you guys to win it all that year, different from maybe previous years?
Yeah, Coach Noel, he had a saying, everybody's important. Everybody's job is important, but nobody's indispensable. And then he had another saying that champions don't do extraordinary things. They do the ordinary things better than everybody else. And those were the two things that he just kept selling to us. And they had already won 2 Super Bowls by the time I got there. So for most of the veterans, that was ingrained. But I think for the new guys coming in, hey, everybody's job is important. My first year, I'm kind of a backup defensive back. I'm backing up 3 or 4 different positions, playing on special teams, practicing hard. That was my biggest contribution. That I come out there on the look squad and I'd practice and give the offensive players the look of what they were going to see on Sunday. But I felt like Coach Noel had me so amped up that my job was important. It's very important for me to go out there and practice well, to give them the exact picture of what they're going to see. And everybody felt that way. We had 11 Hall of Famers on that team, but nobody looked at those guys as, oh, they're the big shots and we're nothing. And they didn't look at us that way. They're trying to help us be the best we could be. Everybody's in it together. And then his other saying about champions doing the ordinary things. We were a fundamental team. No frills, just we played basically 2 or 3 basic defenses. We had 5 or 6 go-to plays on offense, and it wasn't fancy. And we just said, you know what, we're going to go out there and outplay everybody and play harder and play faster, play longer, whatever it takes. And that was our mantra. And I think that's what did it. And we had some super talented guys, but playing together and playing hard, that was us.
Was Coach Noel a big reason why you wanted to get into coaching after you were done playing?
No,
it just sounds like he was so influential to you.
Oh, he was, and he got me into it. Really, I had no thoughts of coaching. Once I made it, and you mentioned, my second year, we win the Super Bowl. I lead the team in interceptions. I'm playing with Hall of Fame guys, Mel Blount, Donnie Shell. I lead the team in interceptions. So I'm thinking,
and you're thinking I'm about to be a Hall of Famer.
Yep. I'm going to play 12 years. I got one. We might win every other year, but I'll end up with 5 or 6 rings. Played 10 or 12 years. I got a business degree from Minnesota. I'll start my own business. That's what I had down the line. Well, I ended up being like so many other guys. I played 2 years there. I got traded to the San Francisco 49ers. I played a year there. I got traded again to the New York Giants. I got cut from the Giants. So I was 25 years old, and I was basically out of the league. I had been on 4 different teams, and it was kind of the end of the line. And I wasn't ready for it. I was like, and what am I going to do now? I had planned on playing for 8 or 10 years. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. And Coach Noel called me, and he said, you switched from offense to defense. You picked up things well. You've got a great work ethic. You've got good communication skills. You understand this game. I think you would have a future in coaching. I was 25 years old, and he hired me. And again, it was one of those things that was kind of the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because now I come back and I work for him for 8 years. And those things that he taught me as a player that I just did because he said to do it. Well, now I got to go behind the scenes and learn why we did it. Why do we do things this way? And see things from his standpoint. And he told me something, Drue, I never forgot. And I ended up coaching 28 years. Because I asked him, I said, I really haven't coached, and I don't know what you want me to do. What is my job description? And he said, Tony, just remember this. As a coach, your only job is to help your players be the best they can be. And I was like, that's it? Just help them be the best they can be. He said, that's it. You're here to serve. You're here to help them. And if we help all our guys be the best they can be, we're going to have a great team. But to do that, you're going to have to get to know every guy, what makes them tick, what they're good at, what they need to work on, how they learn best, things that frustrate them, things that inhibit them from learning. And then you've got to put together a game plan for each guy to get better. It can't just be my way or the highway, and we've got one way of doing things. We've got to bring in everybody and get them to be the best they can be. And it was so simple. And I thought back, man, that's why he's really good, because he's just trying to help me be the best I could be. He's trying to help every player be the best they could be. But that stuck with me and stayed with me, even as I moved up the ladder. And so often we move up and we get to become the coordinator, the head coach, and then we think, well, my job is to do this or be the face of the team. And he never looked at it that way. He felt like his job was just to be there to serve and help everybody. And that's what makes the best coach.
Well, even to go back to your point about one of his core things being making each guy believe their role was so important, being able to experience that as a player and then go behind the scenes as a coach, how was he able to accomplish that? I guess more so like you're talking about finding out what makes each guy tick. That just seems it's a very time-consuming task when you look at how big a football team is. And so how was he able to do that, and yet he was still balanced off the field with his family and doing what were the ways in which he was able to make guys really believe that their role was important? I know if I'm on the scout team, like I was as a rookie, I'm like, man, I'm trying to get on the field. Like there's this competitive edge. That's not wrong necessarily, but it's natural to feel like your role is less important on the scout team. Like you're not contributing as much. And so what was he doing that was making these guys like truly believe that?
He coached every single guy, and he would work with you and correct you and talk to you and just help you out. And he made you feel like you were important. And it's funny you mentioned that about the scout team. Those, for people who don't know, those are the guys who really aren't playing. They're demonstrating the other team's plays. So when the offense and the first group is out there, they're basically running the other team's assignments. When I coached, Drew, when I was the head coach, I coached the scout team. I didn't coach the regular guys. So I always wanted those guys to feel, hey, your job is important. I'm watching you. I'm helping you. I'm coaching you. And you are impressing me every day. You want that chance to get on the field. You do this job well, and I'm going to notice, because that was my way of letting those guys know that they were important to our success.
I've never heard that. So you would stand as your first team offense was running plays and you'd be coaching the defensive guys.
Yeah, I was never in the huddle with Peyton Manning during the offensive period. I was always on the other side with the backup second string defensive players saying, hey, okay, this is how the New England Patriots are going to play this. And you've got to do this. This is what Peyton's going to read. Make sure we got to disguise this coverage. So I'm working with those guys. And then when it flipped over to defensive period, I'm working with the offensive backup guys. And those were my guys. And I wanted them, number one, to know that, hey, we've got to do a good job to get everybody ready. But number two, you guys are important to me. And it's not going to be just some assistant or a grad assistant that's going to coach you guys. I'm going to coach you. And I did that for 13 years.
Mm. You obviously had a ton of highlights as a coach in your 28-year career, but maybe talk us through some of like the defining moments of failure, maybe early on in your career that you learned that maybe set you up for success later with the Super Bowl run in Indianapolis and building the team in Tampa.
Yeah, I started out and I'm coaching with the Steelers and learning everything Coach Knoll does and talks and how we do it. And we're doing pretty well. Towards the end of my time there, we start to lose some players. Our guys are starting to retire, and it's a rebuilding process. And we didn't play as well. My probably fifth, sixth, seventh year with the team, and I learned the reality that everybody expects production. And they expect wins, and when you don't win, nobody's satisfied. So they made some coaching changes, and I ended up leaving and going. I had a chance to kind of go where I wanted to go, and I went to Kansas City with the Chiefs. And Marty Schottenheimer was the head coach, tremendous man that I learned a lot from, but he was different from Coach Knoll in one big way. He was hands-on in every little detail. And so we spent a lot of time at work. And he came up in a system where they worked long hours. And I wasn't used to that. I had to get adjusted. And my wife and my family had to get adjusted. And if I remember the first week of the regular season, my first year in Kansas City, I came back on Tuesday night home. It's like 2:00 in the morning. And my wife was, "Where have you been? What's going on?" We were worried about it. We thought something was wrong. And it was just a completely different way of doing it, different lifestyle. I was there 3 years, and I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about being thorough and being on point and little details from Coach Schottenheimer. But to me, it was overkill. So then I went to Minnesota, excuse me, and I went to work for Denny Green. And he was very much like Coach Knoll in a lot of ways. It was a more family-friendly atmosphere. I was now running the whole show on defense. He trusted me to come up with the good game plans and how I was going to run the defense. And he actually helped me. He was preparing me to be a head coach. And we had some really good defenses. Had some Hall of Fame guys, John Randall, Chris Dolman, Henry Thomas, some great defensive linemen. Jack Del Rio was our middle linebacker. We just had some good, smart guys. We played good, tough defense. My second year, we lead the NFL in total defense, and I'm starting to get some notoriety now. This guy maybe is going to be a head coach. And I started going on interviews, Drew, and coming in second. You know, I feel good about it. They'd call me back and say, "Oh, you were great, but we're going in another direction." And I remember after one particular one being so disappointed, maybe my third or fourth time of not getting the job. And I remember talking to our chaplain there, Tom Lamphere, and saying, "Maybe the Lord just doesn't have it for me to be a head coach." And he said, "Don't worry about that. The Lord's got a plan. He's got a place for you. Just make sure that when he shows it to you, you're ready and you're prepared. And make sure in the meantime, you're being the best assistant coach you can be." And that was just such great advice. And it was what I needed to hear then. So I ended up working there 2 more years in Minnesota. And finally, the job did open up in Tampa. And it was, how should I say it, a challenge. We had 15 straight losing seasons in Tampa before I got there. The players kind of had a mentality that, hey, we're never going to win. I might as well look out for myself and get my individual stuff in order because we're not going to win. And so I had to change that mindset and come in with just the kind of things that Coach Knoll and Mr. Ruding were talking about. Hey, we're going to win. We're going to win the right way, and having the right type of people doing it the right way is important. And that's what I had to try to sell to them.
How did you not get bogged down in you obviously wanted it to happen right away. And I'm assuming there was a time period between what was going on and what you wanted to happen actually happened. So how did you kind of just keep consistent? And really, what was that length of time before you really started seeing that transformation of people buying into their role, and everybody being important, nobody being able, being disposable? What was that kind of length of time for you guys?
Yeah, it took about 1.5 years, really. The first meeting I ever had with the Bucs, first thing I said is, "Hey, I'm your new coach, and I'm here because we haven't been winning. Got to tell you a little bit about myself, though. I'm a Christian. This is how I am. I'm going to coach you hard, but it's going to be with respect. It's going to be not with berating anybody. It's not going to be yelling and screaming. I'm going to count on you to motivate yourself." Now, a lot of people tell me that won't work. A lot of people tell me I've got to scream, and sometimes I'm going to have to curse at you guys. Let me know if that's true. Is there anybody in this room that needs to be yelled at and cursed at to play your best? And I looked around and nobody raised their hand. So I said, okay, that tells me I don't need to do that for you guys. I'm going to demand some things from you, but I'm going to demand some things off the field. And we talked about character, and we talked about being a good teammate, and we talked about community service and a bunch of things, probably for about an hour. And after that meeting was over, Derek Brooks was a second-year linebacker, and he came into my office afterwards, and he said, I'm going to tell you, Coach, at Pensacola High School and Florida State, even back to Pee Wee football, he said, I lost more games last year, my rookie year with the Bucs, than I lost in my whole life. So I need to hear from you about winning. How are we going to turn this around? How are we going to win? And I said, Derek, all those things we talked about, that's how we're going to win. And that's why we're going to win. But it's going to take you guys buying into it. Well, he was one of the guys who bought into it, but it took us a while. My first year, we were 1-8 to start with our first 9 games. And everybody is thinking, man, this guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not working. And I just kept telling them, we're making progress. We're getting better. It's going to come. We have to trust each other, and we're not going to change. We're not going to do it any differently. Slowly but surely, it came around, and we won 5 of our last 7 that year. Guys had a good feeling about what was happening, but now we still had to put it together because we were still only 6-10. So that whole off season, hey, we've got to buy in. You guys know what it's all about. We can't start over from the very beginning now. You've got to be the leaders for this next group of young people that we've got coming in. Excuse me. And that second year is when it kind of caught on. And we got off to a good start. We won our first 5 games. And that's when Buccaneer football kind of changed the middle of my second year. But it was a long, drawn-out process. You think you've got the answers. You think it's going to be instant success and instant turnaround. And when it wasn't, it was very frustrating. And I remember our 4th game, my first year, we're 0-3. We were playing the Seattle Seahawks. We had the game won. All we had to do was make 1 first down. We couldn't make it. They scored on the last play of the game to win. We're walking off the field now with our 4th straight loss. And the stadium is just about cleared out. There weren't many fans to start with. And I'm walking in the locker room. This guy yells out as loud as he can yell, Dungy, you stink. You're supposed to be a good coach. We're worse off than we've ever been. You stink. I'm never coming back to a game as long as you're the coach here. I remember thinking, wow, I just got to keep my head down and keep walking. I got in the locker room and I told the team, I said, hey, we disappointed a lot of people today, but you know what? We're building, we're growing. You guys can't see it, but we're getting closer every week. You got to hang in there. You can't give up. We got to keep supporting each other. Well, 1 year later, week 4 of the next season, 1997, we're 3-0. We're playing the Miami Dolphins on Sunday Night Football, national televised, and we have our first sellout in like 8 years. The ticket manager came into me on Saturday, said, we don't have a ticket left. I can't tell you how excited I am. We finally sold the game out, and we had 75,000 people at the game. We beat the Dolphins that night to go 4-0. We were on the cover of Sports Illustrated the next week, and it was like, man, what a difference a year makes.
It sounds a little bit like what Derek's question was aiming at is like, I'm sure there were some guys like, hey coach, this community service, this character development sounds great, but let's talk ball and let's talk. And they wanted to hear that. What was your response to those guys? Because obviously you guys had an incredible defense and you guys kind of really evolved the Tampa 2, what is now known as the Tampa 2. And so there were definitely some X's and O's that were going on, you know, behind the scenes. How did you kind of talk to guys when you were clear cut, like your message was character development, involvement in the community, and these things are what are going to lead to winning on the field? How did you balance that with like the strategic aspect of the game and like putting together game plans? And
no, absolutely. And again, it was really straight from Coach Knoll. Hey, we're going to be fundamentally sound. We aren't going to beat ourselves. We're going to play harder than the other team, and we're going to know exactly what we're doing out there. You're going to know your assignment, so you don't have to think about it. All you have to do is focus on the other team. We're going to be simple. We don't care if they know what we're doing. We're going to be tougher, faster, and play harder than they do. And I went to Derek. I went to John Lynch, who was in his third year at that time, and Warren Sapp, who was another second-year player. And I told them, I said, you guys, this defense, it goes back 20 years, but my teammates were Joe Green, Jack Ham, and Donnie Shell. And Derek, you're going to be Jack Ham. Warren, you're Joe Green in this defense. Lynch, you're Donnie Shell. Those guys went to Pro Bowls. They went to Super Bowls. You guys will too if you can execute this. But more than that, I need you to be the leader. You can play this position. It's tailor-made for you. But can you lead like those guys led? And I challenged them, and they stepped up to a man. And Derek, as I mentioned, he got the light. He got the grasp of what I was talking about. And he became a leader not only on the field, but he was a leader in demonstrating to the other guys what we wanted to do in terms of character and off season and being a light in the community. And 25 years later, he's still here. He's got a charter high school that he started. He's got a community service group at the Boys and Girls Club that they do fantastic things. He's involved. He's on the board of the Lightning hockey team here, and he's just so much a part of the community that everybody knows his name. And he's one of the guys who got it. But that's what makes me proud. That, yeah, we developed some great players. Yes, we had good chemistry. We had a good defense. We had a hard-nosed physical offense. But we were together as a unit.
Mm. It sounds like you guys just were building something so special, but then it seems like your time there in Tampa obviously came to an end. Talk about, what happened there and your transition kind of to Indianapolis.
Yeah, that was one of the big disappointments of my life, kind of like not getting drafted. Came here, had a great relationship with our ownership. They had a number of losing seasons and apathy among the fans. But we start winning. We become a playoff team or a perennial playoff team. In 1999, we played the St. Louis Rams in the NFC Championship game. They beat us 11-6. They go on to win the Super Bowl, but we're a couple of plays from the Super Bowl. But we didn't get there, and our ownership just felt like we had plateaued out. We weren't going to get any better. So after my sixth year, 4 of which were playoff years, they made a change, and they let me go. And I remember talking to our players and saying, hey, we made a commitment to each other. You guys are very, very close. You're going to win a Super Bowl here. I'm sorry that I'm not going to be with you, but keep it going. And then I kind of just waited. I didn't know what the Lord had for me. By that time, 6 years in Tampa, my family loved it there. I was involved in a lot of community service work. I didn't know if I was supposed to stay there in Tampa and do something outside of football, or if there was another team that, I was supposed to go to. 4 or 5 days went by. Jim Irsay, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, called me. And he said, I just want you to know we've made a coaching change. You're the guy I want. I don't want you to come up and interview. I want to build something unique. We haven't been in Indianapolis that long. We haven't developed a solid fan base. We've got to connect with the city. And also, I just love the way you do it. That's what I want for my team. So I want to hire you. Just tell me what you need. And I couldn't believe it. But the things that, as I talked to him on the phone, the things that were important to me of community and being involved and getting the right kind of people and winning with character, those were all the things he wanted. And I just knew we were going to mesh. And so I talked to my wife. We prayed about it. And we went up to Indianapolis. And it was a special 7 years.
I think why myself and others can really love your story is because you've been through so much hurt and pain, whether it's a fan screaming you stink and having to deal with that, or being fired from a job that you guys were really building something special. But I know a big moment of loss was when you lost your son while you were in Indy in 2006. Talk about how you process grief, I guess, on a day-to-day basis. What how did you deal with that, and also the demands of being a coach and still being a husband and a father?
Yeah. As my Indianapolis years, we're having success now, and we've got Peyton Manning, and so we become a marquee team, and so there's more demands on your time, and you're getting closer. And we're playing the Patriots every year, it seems like, and we're in the playoffs, and um, things are going well, but you have disappointments, and you have things that come up that people don't know about, and you've got to process them. As you mentioned, you still got to be a dad. You've got to be a husband. But these guys have to be husbands and fathers, and you're trying to work through all that and still win. And it was special. We had a great group of guys, but fortunately, I think the Lord had kind of prepared me all the way through for how to deal with disappointments and work through them. So 2005 was just an unbelievable year. We start the season 13-0. It's probably the best team that I've ever been around. We've got a complete team. Peyton Manning's in his prime, and we're playing games. The closest game we had in that stretch, I think, was like 9 points. We're not even in a close game at the end of the year. Everybody's saying this is going to be their year to go to the Super Bowl. We played the Patriots, who were the defending champions. We played them in midseason in New England, in Foxborough, and we beat them by 3 touchdowns. And I'm thinking, man, this is a special unit. Well, after Thanksgiving, get a phone call. My wife and I, it's early in the morning. A police department, your oldest son died. And I tell you, you're never ready for that. Never ready for that as a parent. And it was a shock. And I don't think that is the thing that derailed our team, but it hurt a lot of guys. My son had grown up on the sidelines. They'd known him. He's 18 years old at the time. And it was a tough period. But I tell you what really carried me through, Drew, is at the funeral, at James's funeral, one of my high school buddies is at the end of the line, and after everybody's gone from the church, he comes up to me and he says, Tony, I just want to ask you a question. With what you know about heaven and everything you know in the Bible, if God gave you the ability right now, he said, you can bring your son back, would you bring him back? And I thought about it right there, and I said, man, Larry, with what I know about heaven, I couldn't do that. I couldn't bring him back. That would be selfish. And he said, that's the point. He said, he's in good shape. You're going to be fine. It's going to be tough on you, but don't worry about him. And that kind of just changed my mindset right there. We still grieved and still tough, and I still think about not having my son here. But that little bit of information that just made me think, I said, that's the message. That's the message I've got. And over the last 15 years, I've gotten to speak to so many parents who have been through the same thing and be able to encourage them. As a matter of fact, the next year we win the Super Bowl. We're coming back.
Crazy.
The next day on Monday, there's a big parade that they've got planned for us, and we land in Indianapolis, and the front page of the newspaper is, the top story is Colts win Super Bowl. And then the story right below that is 2 kids killed in train accident. And I come to find out later on, his family's going to have a Super Bowl party. Mom is getting the house ready to go. So she sends the boys out with the neighbor so she can get the house ready. And they get hit by a train while they're getting ready to watch our game. And I just couldn't believe it. I ended up getting to speak to the family, talk to them, share Christ and, what that means. But I really think that God gave me some of those disappointments so that you could help other people get through them. And our team that year was the same way. Our 2006 team, we had some of those same incidents. Reggie Wayne, a great receiver for us. We're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars early in the season. Reggie catches a big ball, allows us to win the game. We're in the locker room celebrating. And the PR director comes up to me and says, hey, I don't know how to tell you this, but we got to get word to Reggie. His brother was just killed in a car accident in New Orleans. and you got to let them know. And we went through 4 or 5 of those things like that year. But I think that's what brought the team tighter and closer. And that the 2006 team was as close as any team I've ever been on. And I think a lot of that is because of what we had to go through.
That's so heavy, but it's super encouraging to hear. I think I don't know. I know some friends. A big disappointment, I think, maybe transitioning a little bit to your post football time. A lot of disappointment guys have an experience and a hard time is retirement and transitioning out of something they've done for so long in their life. And it seems like for you, maybe your time transitioning out of playing wasn't as hard. I bet it was hard, but you got right into coaching and found success doing that very quickly and did that for a very long, extended period of time. Maybe talk about your time retiring from coaching. Was that difficult? Was that you retired pretty quickly after that Super Bowl season, right? Like the next year?
I did. I actually coached 2 more years, but I was 53 when I retired, still young. All the advice I had gotten was don't retire from something. Retire or change and go to something. And that was, what happened for me. I didn't know it at the time when I was playing, but coaching was there waiting for me. That was my next career, 28 years. Well, when I was ready to retire, I really felt like I was going to do more in terms of community service and my church in Tampa and being around the city and around my kids. But I got the opportunity to go to NBC and broadcast and stay involved in it, in the game of football. And it gave me a platform to still do a lot of the things that I wanted to do in terms of service, but still be involved in the game. So I was pretty fortunate because I got to go to something again. This will be my 14th year as a broadcaster now. And I'm really thankful to the Lord for giving me that career. But when I talk to some of my former players and guys who are struggling, it's the fact that they retire from football, but they really don't have that thing to go to yet. And they're trying to discover what that is. What is going to be my niche? And so many guys, and you can probably relate to this, they've been playing football since they were 6 or 7 years old. They've always been the best. They've always worked at it. It's always been on the horizon the next year. Hey, I'm going to do this because I'm going to get better. I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to get faster. I'm going to learn more about the game. And every year, the next year is something in football. Well, now all of a sudden you don't have, what's my next year going to be? What is that something? And when they're not sure of what that is, that can be very intimidating.
Yeah, I just hear so many stories of guys just wanting to play as long as they can, and eventually that road comes to an end. And it goes back to even Chuck Noll's point to go way back in our conversation of don't make football your life. Enjoy it, make it a passion, but don't make it your life.
Absolutely. And find some other things that you can invest in. And I think that's an issue for so many guys. When you leave college at 21 or 22, you say you have a 10-year career. Well, now all your college classmates, they have gone on to different things. They're in their career. And now you feel like you're 10 years behind. Well, these guys have a head start on me. What do I do now? How do I catch up? And so many guys that I had that were very, very confident guys on the field, captains, leaders. Well, now they're telling their wives, I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm good enough in this arena, or I've got to find a niche where I can catch up with these guys. And it becomes daunting to some guys. But if you've kind of built and prepared yourself and you're ready and you're kind of dabbling at other things, okay, now when I'm ready to retire, I think I'm going to jump into this, but I've already got some experience in it. That's probably the ideal way.
I know an area you've invested heavily in is fatherhood, specifically through All Pro Dad. And I know you were at even something in Florida where $70 million was granted to support fathers in Florida, which is awesome. Talk a little bit about what you're doing with that platform and how you're trying to, and the message I guess you're trying to get across to fathers.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about my dad earlier, and my dad was so special in my life. And he was a teacher, so that when we were home from school, he was home, and we were off in the summers, he was off. And so he was always with me, and I was always doing stuff with him. And I kind of thought that was normal. That's what dads do. And then as I got to college, I kind of understood everybody's dad wasn't like that. Some guys didn't even have the blessing of having a dad around. And when I got into professional football and I became a coach and got to know some of my players, I saw that same thing. So many guys did not grow up with their dad, and if they didn't, they were very fortunate because it was always, oh, my high school coach or my position coach took an interest in me. Well, what happens to the guys who don't play football or are not involved in sport? They aren't coached by that coach. Where do they get that from? Where do they get that nurturing? Who's their role model? And it's so necessary. So I think it really, that's when it first started hitting me, when I saw that so many of my teammates and so many of the players that I coached didn't have the benefit of that role model like I had with my dad. But it really hit home to me my first year coaching the Bucks. There was a minister, a pastor in town, Abe Brown, really well-known pastor in Tampa, and he invited me to go on a prison outreach with him. It's something that he did, and it was just part of his work. And I was a little hesitant at first, but I decided to go. He said, oh, these men would love to see you. And I had the sense that we're going to see a lot of 40 and 50-year-old guys, kind of hardened, grizzled guys. And we got to this first prison, and there were so many 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and it shocked me, and it kind of broke my heart. They looked like my boys. And I remember riding back and saying, Reverend Brown, how do guys get there at 19 years old, at 20 years old? And he said, well, there's a lot of reasons, but I can tell you the biggest reason. It's not social economics, it's not education, it's not race. The biggest reason that these guys are here, the common denominator, is not growing up with their dads. That's how you get into these places at 19 and 20 years old. Hmm. And I said, wow, that hit me hard. And so shortly after that, I got involved with an organization called All Pro Dad that really, the mission is strengthening that father, son and daughter relationship, and trying to give men the tools that they need to be good at that job of parenting. And it's been special. It's been now 20 years that we've done it, and I'm so excited. And as you mentioned on Monday, the legislature passed a bill to take $70 million a year and really give out to organizations that are committed to strengthening fathers. So I think the state of Florida is really doing a good job in that way, because that is so critical, that having that role model there for the sons and daughters to look up and say, this is what the man of the house should look like. That's important.
And Darren Gray with All Pro Dad has become a pretty good friend of mine, and he's an awesome man. I think in the essence of time, I want to get to the Q&A from the fans. We got 3 questions.
Sure.
So
okay.
I'll just fire them at you, maybe 30 to 60 seconds on each. And there's some good questions. So Jackson Groff asked, how did your faith in Christ affect the way you coach football? Maybe 1 or 2 tangible ways.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to be not just a person who helped my players be better on the field. I wanted to help them be better men. I wanted to set an example. I wanted to be that role model for so many of my players. And also, I wanted to do it with integrity. I didn't want to cut corners. I didn't want to be somebody that my players would say, yeah, he taught me a lot about football, but I really didn't like playing for him. So that faith in Christ kind of influenced how I did things.
Okay. Coach Manier asked, what is the most important thing to teach youth in athletics today?
I think there's really 2 things that our youth need to know. Number one, being a good teammate is better than being a good player. And that is so critical. I think we just now, because of social media and everything, it's I, me, what's my brand? How do I look? And teaching people that being part of a team is really, really critical. That's number one. And then the second thing I think that is important that they get, and they do get it from sports, is you don't win every game. How do you bounce back from defeat? How do you bounce back when you fumble the ball at a crucial situation? How do you bounce back when you give up the winning touchdown pass at the end? It's not the end of the world. You've got to respond to it.
Mm. It even goes back to those principles from Coach Knoll, to say it again.
Yeah,
absolutely. Of embracing your role. I know at Notre Dame, when we went from that 4-8 season to 2016 to that championship run, losing to Clemson in the semifinals in 2018, it was guys like Coach Polian, and it was guys like Matt Bayless, our strength coach, and our DC, Clark Lee, and these guys really making everybody believe, like you said, that their role was important regardless of where they were at. And when guys embraced their role, we became a full team. It wasn't guys that were worried about their draft stock or worried about.
Teams win. Yeah.
And when the team wins, everybody wins. All right. Last question. Beckham Browning asks, what are the core characteristics of a winning culture, and how do you implement it? I think we talked a little bit about this with building Tampa, but maybe your Super Bowl team with the Steelers, those playoff teams with Tampa, and maybe that 06-07 team in Indianapolis. What were maybe some core characteristics of that team that was different than other teams you coached and played for?
I'll tell you, everyone looks at talent. Everyone thinks that talent is it, and talent is an ingredient, but it's not at the top. It's togetherness, it's unity, it's determination, it's helping each other be the best they can be. We had one sign in our locker room for the whole 13 years I was the head coach, and it was just 6 words. Only sign we had: expectations, execution, no excuses, no explanations. Expectations, you have to think like a champion, believe that you can do it, set your goals high, think like a good teammate. Okay? Then how do you get that done? That's where the execution comes in. What does it take? Well, we've got to practice hard. We've got to be on time in the meetings. We've got to be detailed and do the things that it takes to meet those expectations. And then no excuses, no explanations. There'll always be people that will tell you why you can't do something, what's going to be tough about it, how this is going to be impossible. Don't allow yourself to think that way. If we can get it done, if we choose to, and if we don't, we're not going to explain it to people. We're just going to get back to work the next day and work harder to meet those expectations. So that was kind of our philosophy, and I think the chemistry of a team will tell you a lot more about their success than their talent.
Mm. Coach, I really have cherished your words and the time that we've had, and you've gone above and beyond even the time we had set aside. And so I just so appreciate you, and I'm really thankful that you would come on this show and help elevate this platform, but more importantly, just share such a candid and look into your life, and just share and be vulnerable the way that you did was really cool. And I felt like you were just present the whole time, and it was just really cool to experience. So I appreciate that.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for letting me be part of this podcast. And I just hope you can get this message out to people that there's a lot more to football. There's a lot more to athletics than just what they see on the field.
And that's certainly what I'm trying to do with this show is just tell some of the better stories in sports, maybe not from a perspective of accomplishments on the field, but really what built that person into the person that was able to succeed. And so appreciate you. You're going to be in the booth again for the Irish this year?
Yeah, I don't know. We're still kind of sorting through that. I hope so. So. That was fun.
Okay. Well, I hope that you are, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. But again, thanks, Coach. I appreciate you.
All right. Thanks for inviting me, Drew. Good luck this year. Thank you.